Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Watch Us Thrive podcast. This is your girl, Leanne. I am super excited to introduce you guys to this week's guest. This is her first time being a guest on a podcast. I am so honored that she is willing to share her own story of turning her pain into her power. So, Maricruz, welcome to Watch Us Thrive. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's an honor to be here. It really is. You're popping my podcast cherry. So
Yes. Yes.
And happy International Podcast Day for the
Yes, we are recording this on September 30th, 2024, and today is National Podcasters Day. So shout out to the podcasters. It's not easy, but it is such a rewarding job that we're doing. And it's really why I've been able to connect with so many amazing people like yourself. So I would love for you, let's start off with a little intro about who you are and what you do. And then we're going to really dig into your story because your story is one that's very powerful and it's something that a lot of us have experienced, but you have been able to turn it into something really beautiful. But first, let's start off with an intro.
Well, hello. My name is Maricruz Kwon. How do I even start? I'm a native Californian, but I am a transplant to Houston, Texas. But I've been living here for almost 20 years, but my heart is like split between the both because there's so many pluses or minuses on both sides where I'm just like, oh my God. But I'm a native SoCal girl. And now I'm living on the third coast. So I've been raising my two children here and I have a big son. And he say he's big, where he's like 200 something pounds boy, like 19 years old. And I have a little one, my daughter, Esperanza. She is 5 years old. So brief history about me. My life has always just been about school, work, and the family. And professionally wise, I've been doing digital filmmaking and video production for 20 odd some years on and off, because you had to take the jobs to raise the kids or be a wife or put myself through school. But here in Houston, I just finished off my schooling and I just been working as like a multimedia content producer, coordinator, whatever you want to call it, manager. I've done it all from beginning of productions, made films, short films, to now that I actually had turned my focus to being more of a photographer. I love just the art of storytelling in itself. I just decided to step off of production sites and not be a director or be a cinematographer. Editing was always my jam. So it's to me, it's like putting the puzzle pieces together. But my love right now is photography and just telling other people's stories through that. So I love being the person that's behind the scenes in the events. I want to be that little spider on the wall that sees everything, because of my biggest takeaway of what I learned in my profession was just who you are when you think no one's watching is who you truly are. And that kind of ties into the stories and stuff like that, my background.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And we're definitely going to talk about your project that you just did, Out of the Shadows. We're going to get more into the meaning behind it. But what I want to focus on right now is the woman before. I know that you mentioned in 2023, there was a series of events that were really detrimental, maybe is the word, to the woman that you were. It was really a tough year for you. And again, like I said before we started recording, you share as much or as little as you're comfortable with talking about, but kind of take us through that journey of some of the things that you experienced during that time that really affected you and eventually created the woman that you are today.
Ooh, well, 2023 was not my year. It was a basic rock bottom, but breakthrough year. I can say that. I was actually involved in a narcissistic abusive relationship. However, I didn't know I was in one until I got out of it. It was crazy. So if I start from 2023 moving backwards, so within 1 year, I had a miscarriage. I broke up, got out of the relationship. A couple months later, I lost my job and I just been floating around figuring out what I was trying to do with my life, have mental breakdowns and just a 40-pound weight gain. And just everything was just what you think on paper is completely horrifying. And I'm still coming out of the processes. But what I've learned from those things is just that, man, I can grow these concrete walls and I'm breaking through these glass ceilings. I've been achieving so many things that I never thought I could achieve before. And yeah, I may not be seeing it monetary wise, but I know who I am on the inside. I'm more confident. I believe in myself and I believe in others too, where I'm just ooh, I need to integrate this into what I do for a living. I no longer want to be not only the abuse from drama from the relationship I was in, is also the corporate drama that I had through being through layoffs and being a woman of color in the office, or just being a woman in the field period, where I'm just like, holy shit. But I also know that I am a very caring person, and I love so hard and so deeply that it goes into everything I do. So of course I can't help but feel sensitive. But 2023 was not my year when I was just like, screw this. This is going to be, I'm going to come back from this and watch me, watch me. So
Watch her thrive.
exactly, watch me.
Yes, yes. And I appreciate you sharing that because I say like my come to Jesus moment as well. Mine was in 2021 when I got out of, well, really escaped from that abusive relationship that I was also in that started during the pandemic. And we know how shitty the fucking world was during COVID. And then to be in an abusive relationship on top of that, I really had to break down to almost nothing to, if you think about the phoenix rising from the ashes, like really start to have that breakthrough to really start to put the tiny pieces back together in different spots, though, for me to create the woman that I am today. And it's because of the pain and the abuse and all of the things that I've gone through in my life that led up to that, that was really my own awakening. And I appreciate you for sharing that as well, because it's really easy for us to not learn the lesson. I mean, for me, when I think about my own situations and just repeating the cycle over and over in toxic situations, I did not learn the lesson until my life was almost taken from me. And I think it's a lot easier for people to just continue repeating the cycle and being stagnant and not moving and just finding the same toxic partner in a different person, as opposed to doing the opposite of what me and you did. We were able to learn, and we're still learning through the experiences that we've gone through. So talk a little bit about, I want you to definitely touch on that relationship a little bit more, and, you know, you getting out. I commend you so much for even wanting to talk about it because it's not easy, but take us on that journey and then you starting to rebuild your life afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. So I met my former partner at work, as most relationships kind of start. And I actually had a previous toxic relationship that came from like a workplace romance, and it was just like a hot mess. So out the gate, before like someone said, he's like, "Oh, you're interesting and stuff." I'm all like, "Look, da 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 da. Like, I'm not gonna play around. I don't want to be this. I'm actually kind of looking for more of a lifelong type partner. So if that's not on your wish list, then cool. Just be honest about it. I don't care, you know, what it is. Hey, I might find you cute enough and we can have a good time, but we call it a day." I already knew what I wanted. So unbeknownst to me, he was just like, you know, collecting that data. Cause he was very good looking in my opinion. And he was charming and he was the nice guy. And, you know, we coupled just friendly jokes turn into like, hey, let's have group lunches. And then, cause we worked on the same floor, but we didn't work together. So our work was separate. And then we just became more friendly and just had more one-on-ones and just had mutual like interests. So as any type of relationship blooms. But there'd be kind of little off things where just off-putting stuff where like he'd cancel like a lunch date, or he'd be like, "Can you go out with me on a Wednesday?" And then I'd be like, "Okay, Wednesday here." He'd be like, "No call, no show." And I'd be like, "Okay, one, are you dead? Or is it, you know, whatever?" And I'm like, if you couldn't make it, it's cool. You know, I understand life happens. Sometimes I don't want to do stuff. But I just kind of let things slide because it would just always be a lot of the love bombing where it's just like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. He did something more on the romantic side to make up for it." Or I'm thinking of something sentimental because I'm big on like sentimental stuff. So he would always just pinpoint that. So I kind of let things go, obviously, for 5 years because I was involved with this man. But things kind of just got crazier. Like yourself, like you said, shit happened to you during the pandemic. Same thing as mine. We just had a new baby. We got locked down. And based on my job, my actual work increased because everybody needed an online presence. And me being a videographer and photographer, oh, here I am. Oh, setting up Zoom meetings and teaching people how to have a more of an online presence. So I was everywhere. I was in COVID hospitals. I've been in the morgue. I worked for medical institution. So I was around a lot of doctors and the whole scare of this is a very contagious virus and stuff. But I thrived in my work. But unfortunately, the work environment got super toxic because people were freaking out, didn't know what to do. And all their old habitual habits of just like, oh, well, we do what we want, still try to play in and just like, so it just added so much pressure. Plus, we had a brand new baby. She was born in summer 2019. So pandemic, what? Right after spring, March 2020. So everything just got locked down. So, you know, taking care of her, still breastfeeding her, going to work, going to these places, being there for everybody. And then having him just kind of just degrade, he kind of disintegrated himself. Like the way he was thinking, the way he was acting, his mentality was probably just collapsing. And I didn't think I really picked up on it until like the projections came out on me, where he would just like comment about the way I looked or the way I operated, or, you know, the stress factors of like, oh, you know, you just came home from a 10-hour shift. Oh, here's the baby. Or he'd be like, oh, don't forget to get this from the store and don't forget to get this. And I'm like, dude, you're working from home. You're working from my home and you don't have this shit together. It would always kind of be like the little small, like, you know, the little
Those
sticks,
little
like
digs. Yep.
the little digs that always kind of work my nerves, where he's all like, well, you know, my mom used to be at home at 5 o'clock and she had her own business and all stuff. I'm like, well, number one, your mom was married. Two, she had her bills paid and everything taken care of by a man
Right.
who wanted to do that for her.
Hello. She had a provider.
Exactly. And then she also had hired help. So how much of that work was she really doing herself, you know?
Right.
And I'm not throwing like digs and stuff. It was just that comparison, like, oh, I'm not this enough and I'm not that enough. And I experienced that before through like my first spouse or something. Like I don't cook like his mom and stuff, but he loved me because I wasn't like traditional or anything like that. I'm actually really mixed. I'm Mexican, Black, and Chinese, but you know, I do relate more to the Hispanic side of me, but it doesn't mean that I don't anticipate any other stuff. But it was just more that, oh, well, this person kind of did better. And I'm like, oh, don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you. So, you know, you can leave. No one's asking you to stay. But they never did that. And he was just more emphasis. And then it just kind of got more and more like anytime you see a hot chick on the television, she'd be like, oh, or anytime we were out in public, he'd be like looking at girls' ass. But he would do it like more deliberately, where I'm like, hey, this is not cool. Like women are beautiful. Men are gorgeous. There's nothing wrong with checking them out. But when you kind of do it where it's just like, hey, I'm kind of cool, like lower it down a little bit. And when it stopped, those were things I started picking up. And then like the intimacy wasn't there anymore, where I'm just like, well, what are we doing? Are we even like even together and stuff? I'm like, do we need time apart? Like, do we need a refresher? We haven't been on dates. I mean, I don't have any like intermediate family here because all of them still live back in California or we're kind of scattered about. And then his side of his family were just like much older. They weren't like in the, oh, let's watch the little baby type of thing. So it's like, let's find some outside help. Let's hire a sitter. Let's go out on date night. But none of that was important to him. We did have some good moments. And that's the hard part. That's crazy because it's like in between like the digs and the overworking and the stresses of being a new mother again, and then dealing with like this new living relationship, because I've never really lived with a man before. Besides, I've been married twice, my two husbands, and then this man who's also the father of my second child. So it's like, hey, I'm kind of like 10 toes deep in this. So it's like, I need your commitment. You know, I need you to start paying the bills. I need you to start doing the chores. I can't just have you sleeping on my couch and, you know, just doing all this stuff. So I started just kind of being like, hey, we need to work on this relationship. And I was saying this constantly. And just, you know, the love bomb happens, placate me. I'd be busy with work and the baby. And then another shit would happen and then be like, hold on, let me reevaluate. And I just remember I just started studying a lot. I started reading a lot. I learned my own attachment styles. I learned his attachment styles. I got into astrology, like anything to figure out, like, dude, am I fucking tripping? Like, how can I not connect with this person? Do I have communication style issues? And it's just like, yeah, I did learn a lot about that. But then I also learned like, no, it wasn't me. I'm not having a problem. But I finally started coming to like really like dropping down into my heart and be like, what is this working for me? Is this what I really, really want? And like when we found out we were pregnant with our daughter, you know, I told him like my biggest fear was actually raising her by myself. Like I was being vulnerable, like I don't want to do this by myself. So we got to be in it. And he assured me, yeah, I'm here. But again, unbeknownst to me, data collecting, biggest fears. So things that he would play me on would just be family, what kind of mother I was or being, and just the work that I love to do. So it's like, oh, you're not this, or you should be doing like this, or how come you're not like this? And it's just like, you know, it's just crazy. But I really kind of came to the conclusion that I wanted to end the relationship in November 2022. I did a retreat. I got away for the weekend, the first time I was away from the baby and him. And it was just so off-putting when I left, when I was just like, okay, I'm already kind of freaking out. I'm leaving for the baby for the first time. It was just literally 2 days. And I'm all like, everything will be okay. And I was just trying to like say my goodbyes and I love you. And he just like rolled over. And he's just like, like didn't help me to my bags. And I had an early flight. I was out of the house at 3 a.m. I was like, this is really odd. And then like anytime I had chances to call home, he wouldn't answer. And I'm like, this is not cool. Like I have a little girl. I need to know she is safe. If there's an emergency happening, I need to know, you know? And then it kind of just passed off like, oh, well, sorry. Like there was no valid reason to be like, why did you miss my 5 calls? And it wasn't like back. It was like, I called in the morning or in the afternoon and, give it space. And I was just like, this is really trippy. So I really, really thought about it when I was away. And I was like, I don't think I want to be in this relationship anymore. But I didn't know what was going to entail after that. So when I came home and it was just kind of like met with like, oh, you're here, like more of an annoyance and anything. I'm like, dude, I'm coming home to my house, to my
right. Apartment. You're a guest.
Yeah, you're a guest. I was like, because he was one of those like, oh, I don't want to put my address on anything or pay a bill because I don't want people to know where I live. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. Are you just going to slide me some money for this?
Right.
For anything. And I was still thinking like, I was really in the mindset of like, I have to prove my worth that I'm worth loving. I have to prove the worth that I'm worth that engagement ring for. I have to prove my worth that you want to do all this stuff. You want to pay my bills. You want to take care of me as what I see as like taking care of me as a woman. And then I finally just stopped doing that. I was just like, no, I'm like, I've already been doing everything by myself. Like literally, what are you here for? And I'm all like, if I have to be all graphic, I was all like, even the sex, it's like.
Right. She's not getting dickmatized.
Yeah, I have to say it. I'm just like, okay, might as well just say it.
Might as well. Fuck it. It's your truth. It's your story.
And I was just like, what value am I getting out of this relationship? Because I keep putting more into it. So, like I said, end of November 2022, I was like, no, I think I want to get out of this relationship. And I was being honest. And I was like, we're going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to move out. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do with the baby and managing our work schedules and stuff like that to take care of her. Because she was still young. She was still 2 at the age, 2 going on 3. And we tried, like we did couples counseling, and we only had like maybe 3 sessions with her. She was really cool, but I felt like the best way I can explain what I was feeling through was like, okay, we're 2 people and we're carrying a set of bricks and we're walking on the beach because, walking on the sand is hard as hell. And I'm carrying these bricks and I keep dropping these bricks and you see me struggling carrying these bricks. I'm struggling, I'm picking them up. Sometimes I get more bricks. Some of them I can let them go, but the load is still heavy and you're literally looking at me and saying, why aren't you going faster? Or here, you dropped one. Let me pick it up and put it back on you. It's never like, here, let me take this load off you. And then he would just be walking ahead like, oh, well, you're not athletic enough. You can't carry the bricks. Some other girl probably can do it better and faster than you and being with a smile. And I'm just like, that was like what I remember explaining to the therapist. And she was like, okay. And then she separated us and we just kind of talked one-on-one. And the sessions, again, were really short. We only got to like 3 rounds. So I was like, hold on, this is a little bit more crazy. Lo and behold, I was just like, the holidays were always like a hot mess. Like I ended up celebrating them by myself because he would just kind of come up in this weird moods where he's like, I just don't want to be involved. And he would just bail. And I'm like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do? So I just ended up like, having Thanksgiving by myself and Christmas. I was like, screw this. I'm not going through this whole preparing. What do you want to plan? Trying to do the Hallmark Christmas or just trying to feel like the sense of holidays and what it means to be together with loved ones. I was like, fuck this shit. Excuse me. My languages.
No,
shit.
Please. Let it out.
Yeah. I decided to take me and my kids on a road trip to go visit my brother. And I love road trips. It's for me to help me clear my head. And I'm not going to lie. That's one of all the craziness of Roe versus Wade being turned over and everything. And it's just like, that was like the biggest political thing. And I just remember watching the billboards going into New Mexico saying like, you're safe here, da, 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 da. And part of me was just like, dude, you should probably take a pregnancy test. And I almost did it. I was like, man, if I get one, I need to go to the check stop and take it there. And if I do, because I was going to be there for like quite some time in another state where I was just like, if I have to do this, I can and drive home. And I'm like, that's pretty fucking crazy. Like I didn't do it. I chickened out. I didn't get the test or anything, but the signs and billboards, I was like, holy shit. So the minute I got home, which was a few days after Christmas back into Texas, it ended up being a big fight because he was calling me on the road like the day of I was like arriving in town. And I'm the only one driving with 2 kids plus my little kid. The trip itself was great, but coming back home was just like, oh, the minute I walked through the door, he was like, oh, I'm going to head out to the bar with my cousin or my nephew. And I was like, dude, you haven't seen your chick and your daughter for like over a week. And now you're like, oh, peace out. I'm going to the bar. And I was like, screw this. So I was just like, you need to get me a pregnancy test and all this other stuff. And he actually ended up going to the store because he was looking for a fight. He was looking for me to like soak back in doing the whole, what I call like the donkey and the carrot thing. He'd always do that, like just feeding and leading me on. So he was expecting for me to be like, oh, I'm so sorry and all this stuff. And I was like, no, we need to take care of this. And boom, that night that I found out that I got home, I found out I was pregnant. I was just like,
wow. Mm.
oh, there's just so many tears because it was just like, it was not frustrating. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion. And just my experience with the first pregnancy, it was beautiful, but it had its moments where I'm just like, I wanted a girl and I waited so long to have another child. My children are 14 years in age. So it was kind of like raising them all over again. You know, I had one when I was younger and now I have one that was older and I was like, you know, I'm pushing 40 and like possibly having number 3, which, you know, I always pictured myself having at least 3 children. And I was kind of like joyed, but then I was like, the stress of the relationship, I was like, this is not sustainable. I was working really hard at my job. I had another job and the hours were just abnormal, but I loved the work, but it wasn't designed for young moms. It's not designed for women with young kids unless you have a committed partner or a big support system on the back end, because it's just a lot. And again, I always did like social media work, film work, or video work, or photography. So I have to be on there. It's not like I can just do a bunch of remote stuff. I have to be on the scene. And I did enjoy it, but it was just not having the support. So I was just trying to do all that. But I went to the process of like, hey, I'm having another baby. But I didn't get too far because even after the first checkup, everything was fine. But then I started feeling so much more stress where I think that's what probably initiated a miscarriage. And it was like the first time I experienced that. And it's interesting because with my daughter, like, it's funny if I backtrack, excuse me, I also think I have undiagnosed ADHD. So
It's okay.
back and forth. Like my kids, like I describe them real quick. My son, premature baby, emergency section. He was a county hospital baby born in California. Now he's like big, 6-something, big boy. My daughter, I decided to have a natural birth. I had a home birth, never went to the hospital, didn't see a doctor. I had a midwife and everything was just beautiful. So with this third child, I was just kind of like excited where I'm like, okay, well, I'm considered high risk because of my age. So, you know, I'll take it easy. We'll start going through this process. So I was like about a week away from finding out the sex, but when I lost the baby. But my experience with losing the baby is like, I just knew it was happening. And I just decided to just have it at home, go through that process at home because it was over like the weekend and I didn't want to get stuck in the ER. Plus with all the political stuff, I didn't know if I was going to get help. I didn't want to have my baby at the hospital. I just didn't need that right there. So I was just like, just miscarriage at home and then just followed through with my doctor. And everything was fine. You know, I had a healthy passing and stuff. But the day that I was having the miscarriage, it was just kind of like, bam, what else can you say? I'm in pain, physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain, that something is passing. And then all he can do was just argue with me about placing a food order so my daughter can be fed. Like, he's an adult. He knows I'm going through this. And he argues, like, how come I haven't fed the baby? And I'm like, oh my gosh, if this is not a sign that it needs to end, it needs to end. And that happened, and this is already in 2023. And I was just like, yeah, I knew what I said back in November. I was right. I was just kind of seeing one last hope. Maybe he sees the light of day. Maybe he really want to try it. He was just kind of fucked up in his own head. But I was like, no, this dude there's no comeback for this. So within a couple of weeks, I was like, after I started feeling better, I took some time off. I started feeling a little bit better physically, start moving again. I was like, it's time to go. It's time for you to go. And he would do his things where he would just take like a weekend off and just go to his place or just go hang out or just be wherever. It didn't bother me. He was just out of my house. But this one was different where I was like, no, you need to get the hell out of my house. And so I spent like, it took me one day to clear out as much as I possibly could. Threw everything in boxes, threw everything in bags. And then he showed up and I was like, you need to get your shit and you need to get the fuck out of my house. And he would like, the first thing he started going for were like high-end electronics that like I bought or we bought or he bought for me as like a collective gift. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? All your stuff is right here in boxes. I'll help you throw in the car. And I was like hauling everything. I was throwing
She was
stuff.
done.
I was throwing shit. And I actually kind of helped me with the aggression.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just like, no, I'm getting this. I was like, fuck no, you're not touching shit. Your stuff is here. It got so bad to the point where I was screaming. Like, because all I said was like, you know what, give me the keys to my house. Because, you know, he lived here. He lived here with me. And I was like, give me the keys to my house. And he just refused to do that. And I just got so enraged where it's just like, this is like the sense of my security. This is my place of serenity. You can't even give me that. So you still want to try to have access to me? I lost my shit where I ended up breaking his glass window. And I was like, oh, I called the cops on me, where I'm like, hey, I need to get him out of here. There's a young child involved. I need you guys to just kind of come and keep the peace because this shit's about to turn violent. I'm going to get violent on him because I am feeling unsafe and erratic right now. Of course, Houston was just like, well, if you guys got stuff together and you break it, there's nothing we can do. It's your guys' stuff. If you guys got it outside of the relationship, then he could press charges. And I was like, okay, that kind of made me kick back for a minute because I still have a little girl. And I was just so like, just bewildered on just like, how can someone just push you to the edge? Like my body was just a flame. Like all I can describe was a flame. And I was on the phone with my brother because I was trying to explain to him like, well, I was kind of freaking out. Like, dude, I don't even know what to do. I don't want him showing up in the middle of the night, da, 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 da. And he's like, dude, just go to Home Depot and get a changed lock. I didn't even think about that. So I jumped in my car, went to Home Depot. It was like 10 minutes before it closed. I'm like, I need this, this, and this. Bought what I thought I needed, changed the locks. And I swear in 2 minutes when I changed the locks, just a matter of just a blanket of relief.
This is freedom.
Yeah. I was literally, like I said, I was screaming for my life. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, give me back my key, get out of my house, and da 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 da. And I never thought I could see myself coming out like that. But it just really felt like I was just in a corner where I just had to fight for my life. And then post the breakup, you know, we still had somewhat communication, like what to do with our daughter and things like that. But he was just like, no, peace that out. And that's kind of like how it's been. It's just been, I'm living my life. I'm at complete peace and all this other stuff. And at first I didn't, like I said, I didn't understand what a narcissistic abuse relationship was. So I started picking up therapy. I started seeing 2 therapists in tandem, and I was just trying to get myself together because in my mind, I thought, I just had a breakup. I'm going to get back to my, ooh, I look good type of stage. And that did not happen. That did not happen at all. And I was just like, damn, like the biggest thing for me, like in a physical sense, was just the weight gain. And I was just like, I was just trying my best to just be maintained. But then I also stopped breastfeeding my daughter. And then like I got laid off my work. So like my activity just level just went down. So I had nothing but time to myself. And that's when I started losing my mind because I was like, holy crap. All the stuff I had gone through for the last previous 5 years, I didn't process it because I was already running on high stress, not only with the relationship, but also being a new mom and just having a very high octane job. And when all that shit was gone, it was just like, it was just me. So everything just came crumbling down.
Girl, I appreciate you so much for sharing. I said before we started recording, you share as much or as little as you're comfortable with. And I appreciate you for going there and really taking us on that journey because this is your real life experience, right? And this is what a lot of us suffer through silently. So I appreciate when I come across people like you who are willing to show the scars, the wounds, the things that you've gone through. But despite that, that's why I always start off with the dark and heavy. I never like to stay there because you've been able and you are still turning it around and turning that pain into your power. So now I want to talk a little bit about, she's a photographer, like she said, and she had her project, the Out of the Shadows project, was born from her own lived experience with that narcissistic abuser. So I want you to talk a little bit about that journey. What made you want to really start this creative process of you to really heal through what you've gone through and put it out there for the world to see?
Oh, that's a great question. What made me wanted to like start vocalizing my story was like, one, I'm not crazy. This shit really, really happened. It's very hard to believe people, or people don't believe you. It's like the victim shaming comes in and you already know. It's like there's so much shame I feel for myself or I put on myself because it's like, how can I just let that happen? How can I just let this continue? How can I have a child to bring that in? It's like so much mom guilt and so much just guilt as being a person where you think you're strong and you're resilient and you have a good head on your shoulders. So it just kind of reminds you like, man, I'm probably a dumbass, or yes, I don't have a sense of self-worth. And it's like, no, I did. It wasn't perfect. I did. I mean, I dated a lot of losers and losers, but you know.
Haven't we all?
I know. It's like, let me count how many of the ways. And I was just
right.
Like, and I was like, okay, I was young and stupid on a lot of things, but I was like, you know, I never felt putting anybody's life at risk or hurting someone to the point. Cause I was just like, I've always been a very simple person where, you know, household rule number 1, don't start none, won't be none. You don't want someone to fuck with you, don't fuck with anybody else. Like, it's that simple. If you don't like somebody, don't stay with them. Like, it's okay. Break up with me, or I can break up with you. It's okay, get over it. But when I started realizing the stuff that he was doing after the relationship, because again, I started reading, I went to therapists, and I started getting turned on to like PTSD and then all these other things where I'm like, holy fuck, I am a, what's it called? Medical assistant, like wet dream. Got insurance and I got issues.
Yep.
Sign me up. And so I just started figuring out like, this is what makes sense. Like a lot of things started making sense. And I'm like, oh, and I started identifying like, this is this, and not pointing fingers, but connecting the dots where I'm like, this doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, I did get out for a reason. Like my gut instinct was a flare telling me, hey, get out. And now I'm reading, understanding why. So what made me wanted to speak about it, and it took a long time because I was just like, dude, not only I felt like in a sense of injustice where it's like, not only did this happen to me, I'm not the only one. He can also still do this to other people. And I'm like, why would you want to do that? And then also too, it's affecting my daughter because all of a sudden she's like, where's my dad? And my daddy's not here. And she started asking questions. And I'm like, oh, how do I address this? And I've always been like with my children where I'm like, I'm going to be as honest as I can, age appropriate. And if you want to ask me, I'm not going to deny it because I don't want to be like repeating the same cycle traumas of what I had growing up. Like you don't know anything. A short example, when my father passed away, I didn't know he was married 5 times. I don't even know if that's true. But I'm like, well, this would have been helpful when I started picking out boys.
Right.
What is true commitment to me? It's like, and I just don't want to do it for my kids. But I also don't want to traumatize them and say like this and this happened. It's just like when the time is appropriate. And she is just so little, and all of a sudden she's like, her dad's no longer around. How do you explain that? And I'm like, how do you explain that he doesn't want to come see her? I'm like, it's not her fault. It's not my fault. It's his fault. So I just had to like turn the narrative into like, your dad's the one that's sick. Your dad's the one that has the problem. Your dad is the one that he needs to get himself together. I'm like, he needs to start being a good dad, start being a good daddy to you. And he needs to start doing this. And I try to just keep it neutral because she would try to call him. And every now and then, like he's out of the maybe 10 times she's tried to call him, he's probably picked up twice. And he's always just been like, oh, hey, how you doing? Like, acting like the charming, the covert narcissist he is, acting like he's just the bee's knees. And my fear for her is because she was so little that she's just so easy to just be like, I just love everybody and not see that. And the way I want to raise her now is just to be honest and open. Like if someone makes you feel uncomfortable, you can speak out for it. So essentially, I was just trying to reparent her or a new way of parenting her and also understanding how I find my voice. I'm like, so what makes me feel uncomfortable? Don't wait. Don't keep it a secret. Just speak up for it now before it gets worse. So when it came to like doing photography, I always just felt like I just told stories. And it wasn't even telling stories. It was telling other people's stories. I just wanted to add the visual content because I would hear stories about migrant workers and other women's journeys. And I'm like, holy crap, we should make this a movie about you. Let's tell this. Even you, Leanne, when I read your bio, and I'm all like, I need to talk about you this. And I was like, I need to take your picture and show this because it was never about me, but in a way it was empowering me to be, I want to see you. I want to see the real you because I needed someone to see the real me. So me doing my work translates someone seeing me. So that's why I hold it dear to my heart. Sorry, I got emotional. I was like,
don't apologize. Do not apologize for the emotions. I just think it's so beautiful.
Because I care so much and I still do. I just realized like, hey, even hurt people should be seen. And that's how I saw him. Like, I wasn't seeing like he was a wounded animal and stuff, but he had gone through his own trauma. It what made him who he was today. But I don't want to say I saw past that. I was just like, no, I still see a beautiful soul. And I still have hope that that beautiful soul will come out. But he needs to get his own head out of his ass, and he needs to get over his own fears, which ties to his ego, which ties to him being a narcissist, which ties him to be like this. Because I think about it every day. It's like, how do you wake up and just be like, I'm going to be a deadbeat dad today? Like, how do you wake up and say, I'm going to talk shit to my girl today? How do you wake up and be like, I'm going to fuck around with someone's emotions? Like, do you wake up and say, look in your mirror and be like, fuck yeah, like, and if you are that person, then I'm like, do you say it out loud and beat it with your chest? Like, fuck this, I'm not paying child support. Like, say it with the biggest pride on your shoulders. Let's say, I'm a deadbeat dad. Like, I would probably have a little bit more respect for you if you owned up to it like that. Instead of just like, oh no, I don't even know what he says of the reason why we broke up. And I don't need to know. That's just all him. It's not me because I have my story and I have my thing. And we had a lot of mutual contact. So it was just kind of like weird for me because it's not like I'm trying to throw him under the bus, but I'm also trying to be realistic. I'm like, dude, he's still doing his abusive work and it goes through our child because He withholds financial support. He withholds emotional support. So I'm not the only one. He has other children. He has me. He has our daughter. So this is something that's not just a one thing or is a bad relationship or it's just toxic relation. I'm like, no, this is his pattern and he needs help. I'm not going to help him, but I'm here to be like, dude, I got you. I'm more than happy to be a great co-parent with you, but I ain't doing all that emotional labor for another man.
No, we're
Done.
not playing Betty the fucking Builder anymore, okay?
No, not at all.
No, I absolutely. And and I think it's very empowering for you to come forward and share your own story so that someone sees themselves in your experience. I think it's very empowering when we come together as a collective and share the really dark, shitty things that we've gone through. But look at who we've become and who we're becoming because of it. And maybe that will one day empower you who's listening or watching to be like, you know what? Look at what Maricruz been through and look at her now. That can be me too. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want you to tell people, what message do you hope people take away from your work, especially survivors of trauma?
Ooh, that was a great one. One thing I wanted to highlight with the trauma and the project that I ended up doing, the Out of the Shadows project, I actually ended up getting into this artist program and we had to label out themes of what we would photograph. And this one just kind of stuck with me. And I just said, like, this is my number one. I'm going to go with it. I just came out of narcissistic abuse and I wanted to kind of do a portrait series. And it wasn't like I'm here on the other side of the rainbow and I've already made like $1 million. Like I'm nowhere near that. I wanted to be honest and be like, this is where I'm at. I'm probably like in the 30% range of being healed. And I'm like, but I'm not dead and gone. I'm still alive and I'm still kicking. I wanted to just capture that. So I was on the fence of just making it about myself. And again, I'm like really weird about just talking about me. So I was like, let me spread this out. And at first I put it a call to be like just domestic survivors, but then I felt like I didn't have the capacity or the honor or the knowledge to say like, this is the only thing I'm focused on because I'm not an expert in this. I just only have my experience. And as much as I want to be like, I'm an advocate, I'm not versed in that. So I wouldn't want to bring someone who's just like freshly new. So I expanded to anybody who had traumatic experience, whether it be grief, an illness, a loss, and actually got a better response out of that because I'm like, dude, we've all been through some shit. And out of collective healing, it was just like, ooh, everybody heals in a different way. And you may never know what people on the street have gone through. And I wanted to share that. And I wanted to just take like a picture. This is who we are right now. And it's so fucking beautiful. Pause and just see it. And that was it. That was literally how I treated every lady that came into my project. I was just like, we're just going to pause and we're just going to be you. And just the way that they end up lighting up, because at first they were like really kind of shy or really kind of like that. And like even strangers came in, I'm like, we could have probably been serial killers to each other. We don't know. We just had trust. And we just showed up because something was still, a light was still a fire. So telling my story and being vocal about that and helping that other people can understand that it's like, man, I see you too. And there is healing and there is a way. And no, I don't have the answers. And no, it ain't easy, but you have a sister in arms that will hold you and hold your hand.
I love this. I love this so much.
Yeah, because we spent so many years feeling invalidated or saying we're less than, or we're not worth something. We're never going to be as good as such and such. But it's like, that's the farthest from the truth. And if I can just give that hope to some other woman who's struggling, it's like, I've done my job. I've done my job. I've always been like, I never want anybody to feel what I've been feeling. And that probably caused a lot of my codependency in relationship. But knowing that I can still feel like that, but flip it to people who I love and care about in a community, or finding that community where I'm like, dude, this is healing. It's like, oh, I can do this, but not trying to heal and save people, just knowing that I can be a stand of support for them with whatever I can support them with. That is like my biggest message, to be like, you do have people in your corner, even though you don't know it or not. And if you don't, you can always just reach out to me and just be like, hey, I just need someone to talk to. And I'm
Yes.
like,
Yes. Because she gets it.
today, but at least we can talk about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Because you get it. And I think that's really the message that I want people to stay with your conversation and your story is like, to embrace all the parts of you, even the ugly parts that we're ashamed of, even the parts that are maybe still bleeding, even the parts that we're still trying to figure out. Like, that is beautiful. And it's what makes you you. It's what makes you a human being. And don't be ashamed of that. You know, like you said, we all have a story. We all got shit that we've gone through, that we're going through, that we're gonna go through. But I think that's what makes us so beautiful, because it's our truths. And just stand on that and be proud of that. Like, when I think about my own experiences, and I said this on another podcast that I recorded today, like, it's because of the darkness that I went through that I'm here today. And I'm having this conversation. I created this podcast and I have this platform because of the pain and the ugliness that I went through. And for that, I'm grateful. And I think that's really comes with the healing, with the growth, with you going through the shit, walking through the mud, feeling like there's no way out, but you can turn it into something so beautiful. And that's what this podcast is all about. So I want to ask you, Maricruz, the last question. Since you're on the Watch Us Thrive podcast, tell me, what is your definition of thriving?
Ooh, peace. I had to say one word, peace. Like I said, like resume or on piece of paper wise, like, yeah, my life ain't good.
Right.
But in this whole last year or year and a half now, going on year and a half, it's like, man, I've got to enjoy so many beautiful moments, especially with my kids, like reconnecting that. I'm reconnecting with healthier relationships or older relationships that I didn't know I just abandoned because I was involved with this man. And I just have a sense of peace. Like, crazy shit don't bother me as much anymore. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I don't shrug my shoulders and don't care, but it's like, oh, I don't forget about that anymore. It's like, that's not a big deal. And then when I look back and reflect on like how much resilience has happened, I don't want to say like a sense of pride, because I'm like I said, I don't want to fall into the ego trap, but it's a sense of pride where I'm just like, dude, what are you going to tell me, dude? There's nothing you can fucking tell me that's going to make me just bat an eye. There's nothing you can do to me that would make me like be like, oh, let me change my ways. And be like,
Yeah.
no, it's
fuck that.
So I learned to just be more peaceful with that, where I'm just like, anything I do is just all on me, and anything I do is for me and my immediate circle. So it's overall, it's just peace. Like, that hands down was worth it. I may not have the money coming in or like the glam stuff, or, you know, my clothes and my bras don't fit no more. And it's like, fuck. But you know what? I'm not crying every day. I'm not having someone hurt my feelings every day. I'm not feeling like a piece of shit every day. I have a lot more peace. I'm outside. I, did my connection with God again. It's enjoying every fucking little minute that I have where I'm like, dude, this could change in a heartbeat, but I'm going to just enjoy it. And I feel like I'm putting my best foot forward with everything I do, with my kids, with my career, with my relationships, where I'm just like, yeah, because I don't have someone berating me or making me feel like I'm
right.
nothing.
You have that freedom. Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
that freedom.
I'm so proud of you. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on here and being so open and honest about your story. I know your vulnerability, your tears is going to definitely impact someone and have them feel seen in their own story. I want you to plug in how people can follow you and what are the best ways that we can support you on your journey.
Best way you can follow me is just on Instagram, made by Maricruz. It's very simple. I do have a portfolio, made by maricruz.portfolio.com. But these are also kind of like rebranding, because I am relaunching myself as a full-time freelance photographer. So my is to tell other people's stories. You need your headshots, you have a small business, especially if you're like women owned and BIPOC or people of color. It's like, I want to uplift the community, the entrepreneurs, the mompreneurs, the solopreneurs, like anybody who has a great story to tell and just needs help in the visual sense. I'm here to capture that and give that to you. And to me, it's like, hey, you guys are doing more me a favor. I'm just helping you highlight whatever awesomeness that you are. But the best way to get a hold of me, contact me, is through Instagram. I'm pretty much on that.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm going to link all of your info in the show notes. Maricruz, I'm so fucking proud of you. Thank you for agreeing to come on and share just a little bit of your story. And I'm just so excited to continue watching you grow and heal and thrive in the process. So thank you.
I got you too. Once I see you, I'm going to take you. I'll be like, I'm going to take your picture.
Yes. I got to come to Texas. I've never been, but I'm going to make a plan to come down that way, and we're definitely going to link up. Thank you so much.
Many blessings. Thank you.